The rain hammered against the windows of the briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado, California. Lieutenant Emma Cross stood at attention in the back corner, her uniform pressed sharp, her jaw set firm. She'd earned her place in this room, but looking around at the sea of male faces, you wouldn't know it. Commander Jack Morrison stood at the front, pointing to a map of the Middle Eastern coastline. His voice carried the weight of 20 years in the teams. "Gentlemen," he began, then paused, his eyes flicking briefly to Emma. "And Lieutenant, we've got a situation that requires our best." Emma felt the familiar sting. After 2 years of proving herself, first in reconnaissance, then in counterterrorism operations, she still didn't quite belong. Not in their eyes. The mission brief was straightforward but deadly. A terrorist cell had taken hostages in a compound near the Syrian border. Intelligence suggested they'd move the captives within 48 hours. The window for action was closing fast. "We need a sniper team to provide overwatch," Morrison continued. "The shot will be from 1,200 meters elevated position, likely in adverse conditions." He crossed his arms. "I'm assigning Petty Officer Henderson and his spotter." Emma's hand went up. "Sir, I'd like to volunteer for the sniper position." The room went quiet. Someone coughed. She heard a low chuckle from the second row. Morrison's expression didn't change. "Lieutenant Cross, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this isn't a training exercise. Henderson has 42 confirmed kills in combat situations." "With respect, sir, I've logged more range time than anyone in this room over the past 6 months. My scores." "Scores on a range in California don't mean a damn thing when rounds are coming back at you," interrupted Chief Petty Officer Donnelly, a barrel-chested veteran with a scar running down his neck. "No offense, Lieutenant, but there's a reason we've never had a woman in a hot sniper position." Emma felt her face flush, but she kept her voice level. "Then maybe it's time that changed, Chief." Morrison held up a hand. "That's enough. Henderson takes the shot. Cross, you'll be part of the extraction team. Dismissed." As the room emptied, Emma gathered her notebook. She'd been through this before, the doubt, the dismissal, the casual assumption that she couldn't handle the pressure. Her father had been a Marine sniper in Desert Storm. He taught her to shoot before she could ride a bike. She'd grown up understanding wind drift, bullet drop, and the mathematics of distance, but none of that mattered here. "Don't take it personal, Lieutenant." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Commander Sarah Price, one of only 3 women in the entire command structure. "Morrison's old school. He doesn't trust anyone who doesn't fit his mental picture of a warrior." "I'm not asking for special treatment," Emma said quietly. "I'm asking for a fair chance." Sarah nodded. "I know, but fair chances are earned slowly around here. Keep your head down, do your job, and eventually they'll see what you're made of." Emma walked out into the California evening. The Pacific Ocean stretched out before her, dark and restless. She joined the Navy at 18, driven by her father's memory and a desire to serve something bigger than herself. She'd survived Bud S training when everyone said she'd quit. She'd earned her commission through sheer determination. And still, she was the outsider. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "How's my warrior daughter? Your dad would be so proud." Emma smiled despite herself. Her father had died when she was 16, a training accident that had shattered her world, but his lessons had stayed with her. "Shooting isn't about strength," he used to say. "It's about patience, breath control, and seeing what others can't see. The best snipers aren't the biggest or the strongest. They're the ones who can wait and think and adapt." She'd built her entire career on those principles. But in a world that still measured warriors by how much they could bench press, patience wasn't always valued. The next morning, the team assembled at 500 hours. Henderson was a good sniper. Emma had watched him work. But she'd also watched him miss shots that required creative thinking. He was trained to follow the book, to take the shot when conditions were optimal. Emma had learned from her father that optimal conditions rarely existed in combat. The mission brief revealed new complications. The hostages were being held on the 3rd floor of a fortified building. The only clear line of sight was from a ridge 1,300 meters away, 100 meters farther than originally estimated. And the weather forecast predicted heavy winds and possible rain. Morrison looked grim. "Henderson, can you make that shot?" Henderson hesitated. Emma saw the doubt cross his face. "Sir, 1,300 meters in high winds? It's borderline impossible. I'd need perfect conditions." "We don't have time to wait for perfect conditions," Morrison snapped. The hostages move in 36 hours. Maybe we need a different approach, Donnelly suggested. Go in heavy, breach the building, fast extraction. Morrison shook his head. Too risky. Intelligence says they've got the building wired with explosives. We breach, they blow it. The hostages die. Emma spoke up. Sir, I can make that shot. The room turned to look at her. Morrison's jaw tightened. Lieutenant, we've been over this. Hear me out. Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. I've spent the last year studying long-range shooting in adverse conditions. I've made shots at 1,500 meters in winds gusting to 30 knots. I've trained specifically for scenarios like this. Henderson looked almost relieved. Commander, maybe we should at least test her. Morrison's eyes narrowed. You want me to risk American lives on an unproven sniper because she's practiced at a range? I'm asking you to let me prove I can do this, Emma said. Give me one chance. If I can't make the shot in a test, you send Henderson, but if I can... She let the sentence hang. The commander studied her for a long moment. Emma could see the calculation behind his eyes, the risk versus the reward, the old assumptions versus the new reality. Finally, he nodded. Tomorrow morning, 0600, you'll take 3 shots at 1,300 meters, wind conditions to match the forecast for the mission area. Henderson takes the same test. Whoever performs better goes. He leaned forward. But understand this, Lieutenant. If you fail, you're not just letting down this team. You're confirming every doubt anyone's ever had about women in combat. Emma met his gaze. I won't fail, sir. As she left the briefing room, the weight of what she'd just done settled on her shoulders. She'd asked for a chance, and now she had it. But Morrison was right about one thing. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every woman who'd come after her. She had less than 24 hours to prepare for the shot that would define her career. Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay in her barracks room, staring at the ceiling, running calculations through her mind. 1,300 meters, that was nearly 8/10 of a mile. At that distance, gravity pulled a bullet down 43 feet. Wind could push it 6 feet sideways. Temperature, humidity, even the rotation of the earth became factors. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. The bullet doesn't lie, Emma. Everything else might. Your eyes, your gut, even your equipment. But the bullet tells the truth about whether you did everything right. At 400, she gave up on sleep and headed to the range. The facility was empty, illuminated only by floodlights that cast long shadows across the shooting positions. She checked her rifle, a Macmillan TAC-50, the same weapon she'd qualified on. She'd modified the stock slightly to fit her frame, adjusted the trigger pull to exactly 3 pounds. Couldn't sleep either. Emma turned. Henderson stood in the doorway carrying his own rifle case. Despite being competitors, there was no hostility in his face, just respect and maybe a little curiosity. Nervous, he asked. Focused, Emma replied. He nodded, setting down his case. Look, Lieutenant, I'm not one of those guys who thinks women can't shoot. I've seen your scores. They're impressive. But scores aren't combat. You know that, right? When that trigger breaks, it's not just your career on the line, it's some hostage's life, maybe multiple lives. He paused. That weight changes things. Emma had thought about this constantly since yesterday. You're right, but every sniper carries that weight on every shot. Man or woman, it's the same burden. True enough, Henderson extended his hand. May the best shooter win, and whoever wins, I hope they bring those people home. They shook. Emma felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. This wasn't about proving Henderson wrong. It was about proving herself right. At 600, the range filled with observers. Morrison stood near the shooting position, arms crossed. Donnelly was there, along with a dozen other senior enlisted and officers. Sarah Price gave Emma an encouraging nod from the back. The targets were set at exactly 1,300 meters, man-sized silhouettes barely visible in the distance. The morning wind had picked up, gusting from the southwest at 20 knots with bursts to 30. Morrison checked his watch. Henderson, you're up first. 3 shots. We'll score based on accuracy and consistency. Henderson took his position, his spotter beside him calling out wind values and atmospheric conditions. Emma watched carefully. He was smooth, professional. His breathing was controlled, his trigger pressed clean. The first shot cracked across the range. 10 seconds later, the spotter called, hit center mass. The second shot hit left shoulder area. The third shot hit upper chest. Henderson stood, his face satisfied but not cocky. 3 solid hits at an extraordinary distance in challenging conditions. Emma felt her stomach tighten. That was excellent shooting. Not bad, Morrison said. His tone suggested it was better than not bad. Lieutenant Cross, you're up. Emma took her position behind the rifle. The familiar feel of the stock against her cheek calmed her nerves. She'd done this thousands of times. But Henderson was right, never with lives hanging in the balance. Her spotter was Lieutenant J.G. Marcus Chen, a young officer she'd worked with before. He had sharp eyes and a good instinct for wind. Wind variable 15 to 20 knots, gusting 25 to 30, Chen said quietly. Right to left, slight updraft at target distance. Emma watched the mirage through her scope. The heat shimmer told her more than the wind meters could. She could see the gusts, read the patterns. Her father had taught her that wind wasn't chaos, it had rhythms, personalities, you just had to listen. I'm seeing a pattern, she murmured. Every 40 seconds the gust peaks, then settles for about 10 seconds. Chen timed it. You're right, window opening in 20 seconds. Emma steadied her breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Her heart rate slowed. The world narrowed to the scope, the target, and the wind. Window open, Chen said. Emma's finger took up the trigger slack. The rifle was an extension of her body now, natural as breathing. She felt the wind ease, saw the mirage steady. The trigger broke. Through the scope, she tracked the bullet's flight, or rather, tracked where she knew it would go. At 1,300 meters, you couldn't actually see the bullet. You fired and waited, trust replacing certainty. Hit, Chen said, dead center. She heard a murmur from the observers. One shot proved nothing. Luck happened. Emma cycled the bolt, chambered a fresh round. She watched the wind pattern again. 42 seconds this time before the window opened. She waited. Ready, Chen said. She fired. Hit, dead center. The murmurs grew louder. 2 perfect shots, but the third would tell the story. Anyone could get lucky twice. Emma reloaded, but this time the wind pattern changed. The gusts came faster, more erratic. She waited, watching, reading. 60 seconds passed, 90. Lieutenant, you need to take the shot, Morrison called out. You won't have unlimited time in the field. Emma ignored him. The wind was telling her something. There, a shift in the pattern. The gusts were rotating, the direction changing. In 5 seconds, there'd be a null point, a moment when the wind from the west and the wind from the south would cancel each other out. It was a tiny window. Blink and you'd miss it. She stopped breathing. Her finger rested on the trigger. The world went silent. Now, the rifle fired. Emma knew before Chen called it. The shot had been perfect. The bullet had flown through that impossible window. Hit, dead center. The range erupted. She heard voices, exclamations. But Emma just carefully safed her rifle and stood, her legs shaking slightly from the adrenaline dump. Morrison walked over. His face was unreadable. That was impressive, Lieutenant, especially that last shot. How did you know when to fire? I listened to what the wind was telling me, sir. He studied her for a long moment. Henderson's group was 6 inches. Excellent shooting. Your group was 1.2 inches at 1,300 meters. He paused. That's not just excellent, that's historic. Emma felt the weight of every eye on her. Does this mean I'm going on the mission, sir? Morrison glanced at Henderson, who nodded slightly, then back to Emma. Against my better judgment and against 25 years of operational experience. Yes, you've earned the shot, Lieutenant. Don't make me regret this. As the crowd dispersed, Emma found herself standing alone on the range, looking downrange at those distant targets. 3 perfect hits. Her father would have been proud. But the test was over. Now came the real thing. And unlike today, there wouldn't be a second chance. The C-17 transport rattled through turbulence somewhere over the Mediterranean. Emma sat in the cargo hold, surrounded by the rest of the team, checking and rechecking her equipment. Her rifle was broken down in its case, each component secured. In 18 hours, she'd be in position. In 24, lives would depend on a single shot. Morrison moved through the hold, speaking to each team member. When he reached Emma, he crouched down beside her. How are you feeling? Ready, sir. He nodded slowly. I'll be honest with you, Lieutenant, I fought this. I fought having women in combat roles. I fought integrated training. I thought I was protecting the integrity of the teams. He paused. But watching you shoot yesterday, Maybe I've been protecting the wrong thing. Emma met his eyes. Sir, I'm not here to prove a point about women in combat. I'm here to bring hostages home. I know, that's why I'm trusting you with this. He stood. But understand, if something goes wrong out there, the backlash won't just hit you. It'll hit every woman trying to serve. After he left, Chen settled in beside her. Commander's warming up to you. He's scared, Emma said quietly. Not of the mission, of being wrong about me. Are you scared? Emma considered lying, then decided against it. Terrified, but my father used to say fear is just your body getting ready to do something important. The question isn't whether you're scared, it's whether you let the fear make your decisions. Smart man. He was. They landed at a forward operating base in Jordan just after midnight. The temperature had dropped to 40 degrees, and a weather system was moving in from the west. Emma studied the forecast on the tactical computer. Heavy winds, possible rain. Exactly the conditions Morrison had feared. The mission brief was held in a tent that smelled of canvas and coffee. Morrison pointed to the aerial photos spread across the table. Latest intelligence confirms 8 hostages, including 2 children. The Tangos are planning to move them at dawn tomorrow. That's 0530 local time. What's the shot? Emma asked. Target is the cell leader. He'll be visible on the 3rd floor balcony for approximately 30 seconds during morning prayers. That's your window. Morrison's finger traced the route from their position to the compound. You'll insert here, move to the ridge under cover of darkness. The shot is from this position, 1,320 meters, elevated 45 degrees. Emma studied the terrain. The ridge offered good concealment but limited options for adjustment. Once they were in position, they were committed. Weather, she asked. That's the problem. Morrison pulled up the latest forecast. Winds 25 to 35 knots, gusting to 45, possible rain starting around 0500. He looked at her. In training, you've never shot in rain. No, sir, but I've studied the ballistics. Rain affects the bullet's trajectory, adds weight, creates drag. I can compensate. Donnelly shook his head. Compensate? Lieutenant, you're talking about a shot that even in perfect conditions is nearly impossible. Add rain, add those wind speeds. He looked at Morrison. Sir, maybe we need to reconsider the approach. We've been over this, Morrison said sharply. Breach the compound, the hostages die, this is our play. Emma spoke up. I can make the shot. In a storm, Donnelly's skepticism was clear. In a storm, Emma's voice was quiet but certain. The conditions make it harder but not impossible, I just need to adapt. The room was silent. Finally, Morrison nodded. We move in 4 hours, get some rest. Rest was impossible. Emma lay on a cot in the women's quarters, listening to the wind pick up outside. The storm was coming early. She ran through calculations, adjusting for rain, for increased wind, for reduced visibility. At 200, the team assembled. They moved out in 3 vehicles, lights off, navigating by night vision. The landscape was barren and hostile, ancient hills that had seen thousands of years of conflict. Emma felt the weight of that history pressing down. They reached the insertion point at 3:30. From here, they'd move on foot to the ridge, a 3-mile hike through rough terrain. Emma carried her rifle case on her back, the weight familiar and reassuring. Chen was beside her, carrying the spotting scope and range-finding equipment. How's the shoulder? He asked quietly. Fine. She'd taken a hard fall during extraction training 2 weeks ago, bruised the rotator cuff. It ached in the cold, but she could manage. The hike was brutal. The wind increased with every step, and by the time they reached the ridge, rain had started, a cold, driving rain that cut through their gear. Emma's fingers were numb as she set up her position. Morrison's voice crackled through her earpiece. All teams in position. Lieutenant Cross, what's your status? Emma looked through her scope at the compound, barely visible through the rain. The distance marker read 1,321 meters. The wind was gusting erratically, the rain creating a curtain of gray between her and the target. This is Cross, I'm in position, but conditions are worse than forecasted. Visibility is limited, wind is variable. She paused. Sir, I need to be honest. This shot is going to be extremely difficult. There was a long silence, then Morrison's voice, can you make it? Emma watched the rain, the way it moved in waves across her scope. She thought of the hostages, of the children waiting in that compound. She thought of her father, of all the lessons he'd taught her about patience and adaptation. "Yes, sir, I can make it." "Then we trust you, Lieutenant. You've got the shot." Chen settled in beside her with the spotting scope. "Wind." Emma watched, calculated, recalculated. Variable, 25 to 45 knots, gusting to 50. Direction shifting between southwest and west. Rain adding approximately 6 inches of bullet drop at this distance. "Jesus," Chen muttered, "you sure about this?" Emma made adjustments to her scope, compensating for every factor she could measure. But at this distance, in these conditions, there were too many variables. She'd have to shoot partially on instinct, on feel. "I'm sure," she said. They waited, the storm built around them. Emma's father had once told her that the hardest part of being a sniper wasn't the shooting, it was the waiting. The doubts that crept in during the silence, the second-guessing, the fear. At 5:23, Morrison's voice. "Movement on the balcony, stand by." Emma's finger moved to the trigger. Through the scope, through the rain and wind, she could barely make out the figure stepping onto the balcony. The target. "Range confirmed, 1321 meters," Chen said. "Wind?" "Christ, Emma, the wind's all over the place." Emma watched, not just the target, but everything, the rain patterns, the way the storm moved, the rhythm of the gusts. There was a pattern here, there had to be. And then she saw it. The wind had a pattern, but it was complex, layered gusts at different altitudes, each with its own rhythm. At ground level, southwest at 30 knots. At mid-range, west at 40. At the target distance, a swirling chaos that seemed random. But Emma's father had taught her that nothing was truly random. You just had to watch long enough to see the order within the chaos. "Target stable on balcony," Chen whispered. 18 seconds before he moves back inside. Through her scope, Emma could barely make out the figure. The rain created a shimmering curtain, distorting her view. She adjusted her parallax, trying to cut through the precipitation. The man was flanked by 2 guards, but they weren't the target. Her job was the leader, eliminate him, and the rest of the team would move in during the confusion. 15 seconds, Chen said. Emma's breathing slowed, her heart rate dropped. The cold, the rain, the pressure, all of it faded. There was only the scope, the target, and the bullet waiting to fly. She watched the rain. There, a momentary lull in the downpour, lasting maybe 2 seconds. It came every 45 seconds, regular as clockwork. The next lull would arrive in 20 seconds. But the wind was the bigger problem. At her position, it was steady southwest. Through her scope, she could see the rain at mid-range getting pushed hard from the west. And at target distance, she saw the curtain of rain swirling, caught between opposing currents. 10 seconds, Chen's voice was tense. Emma made a decision that defied everything she'd been taught. Instead of compensating for the wind in a straight line, she calculated a curve, letting the wind push the bullet right at mid-range, knowing the opposing gust at target distance would push it back left. It was insane. You couldn't arc a bullet deliberately, too many variables. But in her mind, she saw the path, saw how the different wind layers would affect the trajectory. It was more intuition than calculation, the kind of shooting that couldn't be taught, only learned through thousands of hours behind a rifle. 5 seconds. Emma, you need to take the shot. She waited. The rain lull was coming. 3 seconds. 2. The wind pattern shifted, the opposing currents creating a momentary channel, a tunnel through the storm. Emma fired. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she tracked the bullet's path, or rather, tracked where it should go. At 1,300 meters in a storm, you couldn't see the bullet. You just had to trust. 1 second, 2, 3, 4. The figure on the balcony jerked backward, a red mist visible even through the rain. He collapsed. Hit, Chen breathed. My God, that was a hit. Morrison's voice exploded in her earpiece. Confirmed, target down, all teams execute, execute, execute. The compound erupted in activity. Emma could hear the distant crack of flashbangs, the stutter of automatic weapons. The assault team was breaching, using the confusion from her shot to storm the building. Keep eyes on, Emma said, scanning the compound through her scope. They might have a contingency. She was right. A secondary target emerged from a ground floor door, carrying what looked like a detonator. He was heading for a vehicle, probably wired with explosives. Second target, ground floor, moving to white sedan, she called out. Permission to engage, Morrison's voice was clipped. Emma was already adjusting. This shot was different, shorter range, only 800 meters, but the target was moving. She led him, calculating speed and direction. The wind was still fierce, but at this range, more manageable. She fired, the target dropped. Second target down. The assault lasted 4 minutes. Emma maintained overwatch, ready for more threats, but none emerged. Finally, Morrison's voice. All hostages secure. I repeat, all hostages secure. Casualties, none among the hostages. Good shooting, Lieutenant. Damn good shooting. The extraction was tense but smooth. By the time they reached the vehicles, the storm was passing, the rain fatting to a drizzle. Emma sat in the back of the transport, her rifle still warm from firing, watching the compound disappear behind them. Chen was grinning. You know that shot's going to be talked about for years, right? 1,300 meters in a Category 2 storm. That's legend stuff. But Emma felt hollow. Yes, she'd made the shot. Yes, the hostages were safe. But the weight of what she'd done, taking 2 lives, regardless of how justified, pressed down on her. Morrison climbed into the transport. How are you holding up? I'm fine, sir. Liar, he sat down across from her. First kills. Emma nodded. It never gets easier, Morrison said quietly. Anyone who tells you it does is lying or broken, but you saved 8 lives today, Lieutenant. 2 children got to go home to their parents. That's what matters. Yes, sir. That shot, Morrison shook his head. I've been in combat for 25 years. I've worked with the best snipers in the world. What you did today, that wasn't just skill. That was instinct. That was something that can't be taught. He paused. I owe you an apology. Emma looked up, surprised. I doubted you. I let my assumptions and my experience cloud my judgment. You asked for a chance, and I gave it reluctantly. I was wrong. He extended his hand. You're not just a good sniper, Lieutenant. You're an exceptional one. And you've proven that gender has nothing to do with whether someone can serve at the highest level. They shook hands. Emma felt something shift, not just in Morrison's eyes, but in her own sense of herself. She'd proven what she'd set out to prove, but more than that, she'd proven it to herself. Back at the base, the team was debriefed. The hostages were being processed, checked for injuries, prepared for transport home. Emma was sitting alone, cleaning her rifle, when one of the hostages approached. She was a woman in her 40s, thin and exhausted, with hollow eyes. Are you the one who made the shot? Emma nodded. The woman's eyes filled with tears. They were going to kill my daughter today. They said it during morning prayers. They said they'd make an example. She reached out and gripped Emma's hand. You saved her life. You saved all of us. Emma felt her own tears coming. I'm just glad you're safe. What's your name? Emma, Lieutenant Emma Cross. The woman smiled. My daughter's name is Emma too. She's 7. She squeezed Emma's hand harder. Thank you for giving her the chance to grow up. After the woman left, Emma sat alone with her rifle, finally letting the tears come. Not from sadness, but from release. She'd carried the weight of doubt for so long, doubt from others, doubt from herself. And in one impossible shot, through a storm that should have made it impossible, she'd proven that doubt wrong. But she also understood now that the shot wasn't the point. The point was the little girl named Emma who would go home, who would grow up, who would have a future. That was worth everything. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in the office of Rear Admiral Patricia Chen at Naval Special Warfare Command Headquarters. The Admiral was one of the highest-ranking women in Navy Special Operations, and her presence commanded respect from everyone who met her. At ease, Lieutenant, the Admiral gestured to a chair. I've been reading your after-action reports, quite remarkable. Thank you, ma'am. 1,321 meters in storm conditions. The ballistics team has been studying your shot. They say what you did was theoretically possible, but practically impossible. The Admiral smiled. Yet you did it. I had good training, ma'am, and a good spotter. You also had something else, the ability to see patterns where others see chaos. That's a rare gift, Lieutenant. The Admiral pulled out a folder. I'm not going to waste your time with pleasantries. I'll be direct. Your shot has created waves throughout SOCOM. There are people who want to use you as a poster child for women in combat. There are others who want to claim your success was luck. And there are still others who want to bury the whole thing because it challenges their worldview. Emma had expected this. What do you want, ma'am? I want you to keep doing what you're doing. Training, operating, proving through action, not publicity, that excellence has no gender. The Admiral leaned forward. But I also want you to understand what you've started. There are 5 women currently in the SEAL pipeline. Before your shot, the washout rate for women was 80%. Since your mission became known within the community, that rate has dropped to 60%. You've given them something to aspire to. That's not my responsibility, ma'am. The hell it isn't. The Admiral's voice was sharp. Whether you want it or not, you're a symbol now. How you handle that will affect every woman who comes after you. Emma sat back, feeling the weight of those words. She'd never wanted to be a symbol. She just wanted to serve, to honor her father's memory, to be the best operator she could be. What do you want me to do? She asked finally. I want you to train the next generation. I'm assigning you to the instructor cadre for the sniper course. You'll teach long-range shooting, precision fire, advanced ballistics, and you'll teach it to everyone, men and women alike. The Admiral smiled. Plus, I'm recommending you for the Bronze Star with V device for valor. Emma felt her throat tighten. The Bronze Star was one of the highest honors. Ma'am, I was just doing my job. Your job was to make an impossible shot under impossible conditions to save innocent lives. That's the definition of valor, Lieutenant. The Admiral stood. But more than that, you changed the conversation. Commander Morrison has recommended 3 women for sniper training in the next cycle. 6 months ago, he would have rejected them outright. Your actions changed his mind. That's a victory that goes beyond one mission. After the meeting, Emma walked through the base, processing everything. She'd achieved what she'd set out to do, earn respect through action. But the Admiral was right. This was bigger than her now. She found Morrison at the range, watching a training evolution. He saw her approaching and nodded. Heard about your new assignment. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. They stood in silence, watching the trainees. Finally, Morrison spoke. You know what bothers me most about that shot? Emma waited. For 25 years, I've been operating under a set of assumptions. Women can't do this. Women can't handle that. And in one shot, you proved every single assumption wrong. He turned to face her. That doesn't make me angry at you. It makes me angry at myself. How many exceptional operators did I overlook because they didn't fit my mental picture? How many careers did I stunt because of my biases? Sir, you made the right call when it mattered. You gave me the chance. I gave you the chance reluctantly, after you'd proven yourself 3 times over. He shook his head. The women coming up after you won't have to fight that hard, because you've already fought that battle. Over the following months, Emma settled into her new role. Teaching was different from operating, but she found satisfaction in it. She worked with dozens of students, men and women, young officers and seasoned veterans. She taught them the technical aspects of long-range shooting, but also the mental game. The patience, the ability to read conditions that seemed random, the trust in your own judgment when everyone else said it couldn't be done. One afternoon, a young female ensign approached her after class. Lieutenant Cross, can I ask you something? Of course. When you made that shot, the one in the storm, were you scared? Emma considered the question. Terrified, but fear isn't the enemy, doubt is. Fear tells you to be careful, to respect the situation. Doubt tells you to give up before you try. The ensign nodded. I'm in the pipeline for SEAL training. Everyone says I won't make it, that I'm not strong enough, not tough enough, that I'm wasting my time. What do you say? The ensign smiled. I say they're wrong, because if you can make a shot everyone said was impossible, then I can do a hell week everyone says I can't survive. Emma felt a surge of pride. Then prove them wrong, not for me, not for women in combat, prove it for yourself. That's the only opinion that matters. 6 months after the mission, Emma received a letter. It was from Rachel, the hostage whose daughter she'd helped save. Inside was a photo of little Emma, 7 years old, smiling, holding a soccer ball. The note read, she's playing on a team now, learning to be brave, learning to fight for what she wants, just like another Emma I know. Thank you for giving her the chance to learn these lessons. Thank you for being the kind of person she can look up to. You didn't just save her life, you showed her what's possible. Forever grateful, Rachel. Emma pinned the photo to the wall of her office. It sat beside her father's picture, a young Marine in dress blues, pride in his eyes. She thought about legacy, about the weight of expectation, about the responsibility of being first. Her father had taught her to shoot, but more than that, he'd taught her to see possibility where others saw limits, to trust her judgment even when the world doubted, to understand that the hardest shots weren't the ones at the longest distance, they were the ones you took when everyone said you'd miss. The storm had been real, the wind, the rain, the impossible conditions. But there had been another storm too, the storm of doubt, assumption, and resistance to change. Emma had fired through both storms that day. And in doing so, she hadn't just changed history. She'd made it possible for others to believe they could change it too. A year later, Commander Morrison called her into his office. "Lieutenant, I've got a mission that requires your particular skill set. It's sensitive, classified, and frankly, I'm not sure anyone can pull it off." Emma smiled. "Is it impossible?" "According to the experts, yes." "Then I'm interested." Morrison grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." He spread out maps on his desk. "Let me tell you why everyone says this shot can't be made." As Emma leaned over the maps, studying the angles and distances, she felt her father's presence, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a foundation. He'd given her the tools. She'd done the work, and now she was passing it forward to the next generation. The shot through the storm hadn't been the end of her journey. It had been the beginning. And somewhere in classrooms and training grounds, in remote bases and forward positions, young women were learning to shoot, to lead, to serve. They were learning that excellence had no gender, that impossible was just another word for not yet done. They were learning because someone had shown them it was possible. Emma picked up her rifle, checked the action, and began planning the next impossible shot. Because that's what she did. That's who she'd become. Not just a sniper, not just a soldier. A woman who fired through storms and changed history, one shot at a time.